Welcome to Reimagined Childhood, brought to you by Early Childhood Christian Network, where we equip you with the tools you need so you can confidently care for and teach young children. We know you want to provide the very best early childhood experience for children and for their parents. But sometimes you feel frustrated and ill-equipped because the training required is not interesting or just not applicable to your daily needs in the classroom. In every episode, we reveal practical, applicable strategies to use in your classroom that will create a lasting impact and help children build the foundations they need for a lifetime of success. It's time to reimagine our approach to childhood. I'm your host, Monica Healer. My guest today is Stephanie Rogers. Stephanie is the preschoolers minister at Champion Forest Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. She's also the co-host of the Kids Ministry podcast. At this time of year, it's easy for us to be on autopilot. We've got the countdown to the end of the school year started. We know these kids really well. And honestly, we have a little spring fever. I know when I get to where I'm running on autopilot, I'm a lot less creative and I put in a little less effort than when I'm excited and energized. Stephanie and I are talking about banishing boredom in the classroom today. Are you in? Hopefully, some of what we cover today will turn off your autopilot switch and jumpstart the excitement of planning engaging activities to nurture your students' learning. Ready? Set? Here we go. Okay. Stephanie, welcome to the podcast today.
Hey, welcome. I'm so glad I'm here.
Me too. Listen, we're talking about a fun topic today in how children actually learn, and what we're calling this episode is banishing boredom in the classroom. Do you think that early childhood, like young children, get bored in the classroom?
I think they do. And I think one of the markers of boredom is if you, as the teacher, are bored.
Yes.
If you are bored and you're like, I'm doing this again, here we go. We got the same old toys out. We got the same old routine and we're just going to go through it again. If you wake up thinking that about your day, that's probably what the preschoolers are thinking too.
Oh, goodness. That's a good marker. So if you're waking up already bored before you even start, let's group. And that's why I'm excited about today's episode, because we're going to talk through some really practical ideas about how to shake things up a little bit in a way that's still really developmentally appropriate for children and helps them really grasp the concepts that we actually want them to learn. What are some challenges that you see teachers facing right now in keeping lessons engaging?
One of the great challenges, whether you're teaching on a Sunday morning or in weekday ministries, one of our great challenges in serving children, working with children, is social media, screens, the way children's TVs shows are produced today, with the scenes changing every 5 to 11 seconds. And that's on purpose. That's on purpose. That's to help engage them, keep them from getting bored, keep them entertained. But it also changes the way their minds work. It changes the way their brains engage with learning, and it shortens that span. And that's a huge challenge for teachers who are in a classroom setting and trying to have learning moments, opportunities for kids, but you have to change everything every 5 to 11 seconds to keep their learning engaged. It seems impossible.
Humanly speaking, it is impossible.
Yes.
There's no way that we really can switch everything up every 5 to 11 seconds. Fascinating research right now on the effects of screen times and how they're rewiring, like truly rewiring our ability to think and pay attention and process information. Listen, that could be a whole nother episode.
That is, yes.
It probably should be just the effects of screen time on young children. But suffice it to say for today that it's definitely impacting how children are behaving in our classroom, whether that's morning, Wednesday night, weekday, whatever. It's definitely impacting their attention span, and we've got to meet them where they are. Right. And then help them grow in healthy ways. So let's talk about how young children learn, and then how can we adjust our lesson plans?
Young children learn in what we say 7 really basic ways, right? They're really learning in 7 areas of learning, one of which is through satisfaction, right? So when we hear a child make an art project or complete something, like maybe they complete a puzzle and they say, look at this, look what I did. They're learning through satisfaction. They want to show you what they did. And as a teacher, our response can be something like, tell me what you liked about that picture you made. Or if they've completed a puzzle, tell me how you did that. and let them play out that and finish that learning and satisfaction, have them repeat back to you what it is they learned or what it is they did. And so that's a huge way children learn, is through satisfaction.
I've never even considered that, really, is that when they complete something, that's where the learning is happening as they build that confidence in themselves too. I did this. I finished this, which then creates that intrinsic motivation, right? That says, I am good at this.
Yes.
I can do this. What else can I do?
Another way they learn is curiosity. Children are so curious and they want to discover and find, and we want to keep them in that discover mode, that curiosity mode. Yeah. So keeping things in your classroom new, interesting, and fresh, sometimes it means going back to the old things. I recently brought a record player into the classroom. That's old technology. It was so much fun to watch them figure out what this thing was. And so we played real records on it, and they asked if we could skip songs on a record player. That's difficult. That was really fun. We also used it for art. We stuck a piece of paper on the turntable, and we got a marker drawing on it. It was lots of fun. It's an old thing, but it can be made new.
For them, it's brand new. I think that's good for us to consider. What are the things that maybe are old hat, but they're brand new from children? Cassette player. Cassette tape.
And they are listening to your voice on a cassette player and pushing the buttons and seeing how they work. I'm sure lots of grandparents, aunts, uncles might have one stored somewhere.
Us probably have one in our attic. I see it in Texas. I'm not sure how well they've survived, but they might be up there. Even just having them out for kids to explore, even if they don't actually work anymore. Right. I think bringing that novelty into the classroom increases their desire to explore, curiosity, stimulating their curiosity in that way.
Exactly.
Okay, what's number 3?
All right. How about relationships?
Oh, so important.
Learn through relationships. They learn through relationships with their teacher because they're watching everything that teacher does, and everything that teacher does is so fascinating to kids. They want to be just like the teacher. Maybe they want to do what the teacher's doing. And so that's a great way children learn. What I did was good. So they're watching the responses of the teacher, and children also learn really well from other children. Sometimes the best learning happens is child to child learning. Pairing the kids that are really good at something with someone who's struggling can really help in that learning process, but it's also a great relationship builder.
I think that's important to think through. Like, how are we helping children build relationships with each other to benefit their learning? Pair one who's really great, who's mastered a skill, with one or two who maybe are struggling in that area. What a beautiful way to build friendship, to help the child who's mastered things to learn how to be a helper. And also those who are struggling to not feel called out necessarily, but to really be paired in a fun relationship as a friend and learning from each other. I love that.
Yeah.
I think if we planned out our centers that way, maybe even kids to those centers, put a really strong, skilled child in a center with some children who maybe are struggling. That would be exactly what they need, rather than you coming in and trying to coach them and pull them from their groups on your own, to allow the children to really participate in that learning.
Because they'll say things to each other in a way that makes sense to them, or they'll show them how to do it in a way that I would not have thought of doing it. I figured it out. And now they're showing their friends how to do it.
Powerful learning happens in relationship for sure. All right, what's number 4?
How about senses? We have to use our senses in the classroom and to keep things interesting. Our smell, taste, touch, hearing, that keeps things so interesting. It helps. Kids, preschoolers are concrete learners. Yeah. When we think about a topic that we're learning about, if we're learning about our family or we're learning about animals, pulling in the concrete for children to taste, touch, and smell. I like to go through a lesson and think, what are the concrete things in this lesson? How can I engage their senses in a way we haven't done before? If I'm learning about vegetables, maybe everybody's going to peel a vegetable and make vegetable stew that week. Just something to bring in how they're learning with how God made these children to learn.
I think that's so good, to really think through what you're trying to teach and think, okay, more than just seeing things, right? I think it's easy for us to pull out a picture of something, but Is there something in your lesson that they could touch and hold? There's something that maybe they could smell, something that they could hear. I think just going to that little bit of extra effort to say, if you're learning about animals, could you find a recording of that animal or of some animals in a zoo or on a farm so that there's something for them to hear? Could
Yeah.
you find a fleece or a cowhide rug or something? So there's something for them a little bit more than just saying, look, here's a picture of a cow.
And if you have relationships with your local high school and they have an FFA program, would they mind bringing the sheep or the pigs or whatever they have right at that moment, or chickens, to bring in those animals so that kids can see them and touch them and smell them in ways that are different than maybe they would normally have gotten to do at home?
That's cool. That'd be so fun. I'm a big believer in sensory play. I think anything we can do to make our classrooms more engaging sensory wise is better. Not to say we need to turn on all the music, turn on all the lights, but to really be intentional about how we're teaching these lessons. What could we do to make this engage more than just their eyes and ears?
Right. It's amazing what they can do. We had a fun week not too long ago where the preschoolers got to make pancakes.
Oh,
And
fun.
it was so much fun. The thing that I heard so much over and over is, I'm not allowed to pour the syrup. I'm not allowed to pour the syrup. And I said, well, here today, you're allowed to pour the syrup. And so they got to pour, and I got to pour the syrup. You can imagine the conversations at home. I can pour the syrup now. It's so good for them, bringing in those aspects of development, physical development, and hand-eye coordination is so good for them when they're using their senses.
Sometimes we limit our children in what we allow them to do because we're afraid of the mess. But if they don't practice, they don't get good at it. If we don't allow them to practice, they're never going to master it. So
other things happen when they don't get to practice. When they don't get to practice, I'm not good at it.
Right.
And then I carry that thought of I'm not good at it around with me. That does not accomplish any of the learning we want them to have. We want to make sure that even if it's messy, they're doing it.
I'm sure pouring syrup might have been a little messy in a few cases.
Yes.
Practice pouring water and then move on to pouring syrup. What a great experience for them to help with making pancakes and to be able to pour their own syrup. I love it.
Yes.
I'm interrupting this episode really quickly to share something special. It's time for our annual 2-day summer conferences. I'd love to invite you to join us on July 10th and 11th in Georgetown, Texas. That's just north of Austin. Or August 7th and 8th in Louisville, Texas. That's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Each event includes a variety of breakout sessions to equip early educators at every level. Whether you're a first-year newbie or a decade seasoned veterans, we're bringing in highly qualified, dynamic presenters to lead breakout sessions on every topic you can think of for every age group from birth to kindergarten. Would you like a sneak peek at our keynote speakers this year? Well, listen up. On Thursday, we'll start the day with Dr. Tyler Groves, the author of Growing with One Another, Social and Emotional Learning in Christian Perspective. Then Thursday afternoon, we'll hear from Kristen Mathis and Kendra Worley as they present an active, practical, movement-focused approach to teacher and preschooler regulation from a trauma-informed, brain-friendly, polyvagal approach with a spiritual, biblical basis. Whoa, that was a mouthful, but it's gonna be fun. Then on Friday morning, we'll hear from Dr. Cynthia Small about building family relationships and partnerships for the benefit of the kingdom of God. And we'll finish up our 2 days of learning with a concert by children's worship leader and songwriter Yancey. Registration is open from April 1st until about a week before each event. We'd love to host you either near Austin or in the Dallas-Fort Worth area this summer. Where will you join us this conference season? Check out all of our upcoming events on our website, www.earlychildhoodchristiannetwork.com. And now, let's finish up this episode. Number 5.
Children need to play.
Yes.
And they will get to do worksheets. They will get to do all of those sitting down activities for the rest of their school life. But preschool is where you get to build those foundational skills, and it happens through play. There's no better way than for them to play.
I think play, in our minds, we know it, feels like that we might not be doing our jobs if they're just playing.
Yes. And play requires no adult additives, right?
Yeah.
That is so important for children not to have that adult, this is how you should be playing.
Right.
Because that's not play. That's directed activities. Play is really the children leading that activity.
This is where I think most of us could grow in this of allowing children to just play. Because I think as a teacher in a classroom, I often felt I'm being paid to teach them, meaning instruct them. And the reality is, though, at this age, like our birth to 5-ish age that we typically care for in weekday programs, especially, their best learning does not happen with you talking to them.
Yes. 100%.
You said right before we hit record, like the more you talk, the less they learn. That is a powerful statement. The more we talk as adults, the less they learn, because they're not really learning through they are learning through their brains, but I read something yesterday that was like they learn through their bodies before they learn from their brains. And basically we've got to teach to their bodies, to their physical development, allow them to move around, allow them to make choices. Yes, it's building neural connections in their brain. But I think often we consider teaching as telling and instructing rather than creating an environment that allows them to play.
That allows the learning to happen.
Yeah. And to explore and to discover things and be all these things that we've talked about, like to find that satisfaction on their own, to build curiosity, to make friendships with each other and observe each other and learn from each other, and then even engaging their senses. If we are intentional about curating an environment for that, then the play is easy. As an adult, then you're basically there to supervise, making sure nobody's getting hurt and that the environment is still working, rather than being so heavily involved in all of it.
That's hard for teachers. We want to be teaching. We want to be in it, but that's the best thing for them.
I also think play allows us to step back and observe. When you're watching children play, you often see the things that maybe they're lacking in this skill area. Oh, wait, you know what? We can plan some activities that will benefit them in that will help build those skills. But if we're always in the fray, so to say, I think we missed some of that. When you actually really step back and just observe their interactions, observe their skill levels. What do they choose to do? Do they just hang back and not feel confident in stepping play with their friends? It helps you really see where children are,
right?
So that you can then plan a different environment for next week,
Yes.
Be conducive to what they actually need.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, first of all, I can't believe we still have 2 more to go, because I feel like we covered so many great things. But what's number 6?
Imitation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, they learn through imitation. If you want them to do something, sometimes the best way to have them do it is to have them imitate. And they're going to imitate their friends. They're going to imitate you. So everything you do, make sure it's something you want them to imitate. If I sit on the table, what happens? Everybody sits on the table. I want to make sure all of my behaviors, maybe how I'm talking to another friend in the classroom, how I'm talking to my co-teacher, that it's something I want preschoolers in my classroom to imitate. They're going to behave the way I'm behaving and treat others the way I'm treating others. I want to make sure that imitation is something positive.
It sits right in that old adage of more is caught than taught.
Yes.
And how they watch us behave, how they watch us interact as adults, how they watch us interact with each other or with our environment, like the attitude that we have through various things. Children pick up things very, very quickly. We are modeling a lot of behavior that we might adjust if we really knew what children are doing. As a mom, I had a rude awakening one day when I was sitting at a red light with my kids in the car, and the light turned green, and one of my kids in the back seat is like, "Come on, people, let's go." I was like, "Oh, I have definitely modeled some attitude."
That's an imitation right there.
I regularly said that exact phrase with that same tone of voice and everything. It just was one of those moments where you're like, oh, yikes, they're actually paying attention to how I'm
Listening.
acting.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think in our classrooms, we're definitely seeing that. But I think
Yes.
imitation, even with each other, this is where the relationship learning earlier also makes a difference. Children are going to imitate each other too. And
Yeah.
so when you're paying attention to the behavior and things that you're looking for in your classroom, maybe call out some of that really great behavior and go,
Yeah.
hey, did you see how that just worked? Did you see how he just took a turn? So that children are really drawn to that behavior that you're looking for. They really
Yeah.
pay attention to it. And maybe a little less emphasis on don't hit each other, right? Like don't take
Exactly.
care of it, but don't draw too much attention from everybody else because they really are watching all of
They are.
that.
They are.
Um,
Yeah. And maybe have a signal across the classroom that you and that
uh-huh.
friend have come up with. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I definitely think some nonverbal communication is important.
Yes.
All right, last thing, number 7. How do kids
All
learn?
right. You're going to love this one. Repetition.
Yes.
How often do we hear the same things repeated and still need a refresher, like how to get on Zoom? It's simple things that we as adults need to have repeated over and over so that we can learn it. Children are the same way. They need
Yeah.
things repeated over and over till they get it. Imagine learning your ABCs for the very first time again. That's something that you would need repeated over and over, or learning a new language. Imagine learning your ABCs in a different language. That's like a child learning it for the first time.
Right.
They need repetition in their learning. When you're repeating those things, some of them are going to catch it really quick, and some of them aren't going to catch certain topics quite as quick. But that's where those relationships where children can play with other children, and that part of their learning can be strengthened through relationships. As their friend is repeating what you've said 100 times, now they're sharing it with their other friend.
Yeah. Repetition is one of those things where I think as adults, but for young children, it's not. Just the fact that you're telling the same Bible story multiple days in a row in your classroom doesn't mean that you're over sharing that story or that they're going to get bored with it. I mean, like maybe don't read the exact same story 5 days in a row, but tell it in a different way. Add a puppet to it, add some props to it, have the kids repeat to you, remind them what they learned. Just because it's the same story doesn't mean it has to be exactly the same. So even with repetition, I think it's good to remember, shake that up, doing exactly the same thing. But yeah, don't move on too quickly.
Right. Because they need to learn different concepts within that same Bible story can be applied in different ways. Maybe there's different perspectives in that Bible story that can be taught on different days, but it's the same Bible story. Children are learning all at once. And so that repetition helps them learn different parts of that concept in a better way. And it's so good for them to hear it. Now, as a teacher, sometimes we do get, okay, I've said it. It's okay. You say it again. It's okay. Say it again.
Especially for veteran teachers, it can feel almost worse because you've done it for several years.
Yes.
When you feel like, okay, I've done this 10 years. What if you found a new way? Go to Pinterest, Google a new idea for teaching this concept and make it new for you so that it doesn't become boring for you, but still realize that this group of kids has actually only experienced this once or twice or
Right.
I think it's interesting, even with marketing research, they tell us we need to hear things something like 47 times before we remember it. With children, they're learning a lot of things all at once, never just one thing. And so think through that, teachers, as you're planning lessons, like even when you're repeating, say, a letter of the week or something, it's not just about that one letter. It's about everything around that letter. How does that letter connect to everything else? And so there are ways that we can repeat concepts without being repetitive or boring.
Right.
Repetition is not boring.
We won't let repetition be boring.
It just means doing things more than once, but doing them in fun ways. 7 ways that children learn. This has been so good. What advice would you give a teacher who feels stuck in a rut? Like maybe they're a veteran teacher and nothing feels really interesting anymore.
Who in your school is somebody that you just, they sound like they're having so much fun. Plan a lesson with them and see what they're doing. Something that we do is we call them think tanks.
I love it.
Yeah, we take whatever we're learning that week and get together in the same room. We put giant pieces of butcher paper on the wall and the title of whatever we're learning on each piece of butcher paper. And we all shout ideas of different
Mm,
ways that we can learn
yeah.
that lesson. Now, and it's to cover all the classrooms from babies all the way through. What is something a baby can learn? What is something a 1-year-old can learn? What's something a 2-year-old can learn? And we put it all on the butcher paper, and everybody's shouting out fun ideas. The most creative, fun things have come out of those think tanks because we are all created differently as teachers,
Yeah.
as leaders. We all have different creativity strengths, and so that the most fun thing. Sometimes one we came up with a fish stick Sunday for the feeding of the 5,000. So
Yeah.
every one of our teachers had fish sticks and was baking bread in their classroom. And it
I
was so
love it.
much fun. And we all came up with it together because we were in a room together. Being in a room with other people and getting out of my solitary planning time is a huge help.
I definitely think getting out of your own classroom and often be the catalyst to something different. Walk by another classroom, even just stand at the door and watch what they're doing. Maybe it's not your exact concept, but the activities going on often are what you need to jumpstart your brain in a different direction. It's one of the reasons why at ECCN we still do so many live events. Being in a room with other people who do what you do often gives you the opportunity to ask questions, to have conversations that even among your own teams, sometimes you're not having anymore because you're so used to being together. I think getting out of your classroom gets you out of your rut. What if you just called a center down the road, a church down the road, and said, hey, could we take a little field trip? Could one or two of my teachers come over for an hour and observe in your 4-year-old classround? I think
100%.
those kind of exchanges where we really can just see how somebody else did it. How did they set up their room differently? What songs
Yes,
were they singing? Like any of those things, getting out of your own environment for a little bit makes that so much easier. For me, at least, it
absolutely. Yeah.
awakens my brain to where I don't feel like I can only think of the same ideas I've always thought of. I
Yeah.
love
Love
that.
it.
Great idea. Okay, last question today, Stephanie. Our podcast is called Reimagined Childhood, and I'd love to hear from you. If you could reimagine one aspect of our approach to early childhood right now, what would that be?
Slowing it down.
Ah,
100%. Slowing it down because children are going to have so long to work on worksheets and sit in a desk and maybe work on a tablet. That is not going to help preschoolers build the foundation they need. They need to get dirty. They need to get messy. They need to crawl on the floor and cross that midline as much as possible. They need to experience things and hear things and learn how to build relationships and have social emotional skills that are just critical to what will take place as they get older and go through the different grade levels in school. That foundation can really only be built in the preschool years. And so just caring for those preschool years in a way that slows it down and lets them experience everything they can.
I love the idea of just letting them, like we say, let them be little. But I think our society has, for these last, probably the last decade, maybe a little bit more, been very focused on preparing them for the next thing. And so
Right.
our focus has become the next thing rather than the preparation part. And
Yep.
I think if we could just step back, slow down, and think, okay, where is a 1-year-old? What would be fun for a 1-year-old? And just leave it at that. And
Yeah.
really trust that when we provide what they need at 1, at 2, at 3, we are preparing them for kinder and first and second and high school and all of
Yeah.
that by being in the present today, providing them what they need today will prepare them for what they need later instead of being focused on, you're going to have to be able to sit in a chair in kindergarten. So let's just sit in a chair when you're 2. It doesn't actually work because as we're forcing kids to do things early, they're less able to do them when they're actually required to. Haven't given them that foundation that they need.
And we're fast forwarding things that it's just not necessary. And it doesn't allow that thought process to learn how to learn really takes place in these foundational years.
This has been such a great conversation, Stephanie. Thank you for sharing your heart and your knowledge and experience. I know it's jumped me right out of my rut and thinking, oh, there's a whole list of new topics that we can cover on.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking time and being here with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
I loved this conversation. I never have thought of something like satisfaction specifically as a way that children can learn. This episode reignited my brain with so many ideas on how we could make small adjustments that totally transform the learning in our classrooms. If you've been in a bit of a rut or feel like you're on autopilot most days, which of these 7 ways of learning stuck out to you? I'll review them quickly for you. Number 1, satisfaction. Children are completing tasks and building confidence. Number 2, curiosity, sparking that desire to explore and discover. Number 3, intentional relationships between students to actually benefit learning. Number 4, sensory engagement. Number 5, play really is learning. And then the last 2, imitation. Kids are always watching. They're watching you and they're watching each other. And finally, repetition. You might be tired of repeating yourself, but most likely the children in your class still need a little bit more practice. Which of these 7 stuck out to you? We'd love to hear. How can you banish the boredom or maybe just elevate engagement in learning in your classroom? Thanks for listening to this episode of Reimagined Childhood with Early Childhood Christian Network, where you'll get practical ideas to implement in your classroom today. You might even be challenged to change your mind about a few things, and you'll always be reminded that your work matters. If you love this episode, would you subscribe and then share it with your coworkers, friends, and family? You can connect with us on Instagram at Early Childhood Christian Net. That's Early Childhood Christian Net. And on Facebook at Early Childhood Christian Network. Remember to visit our show notes for more great resources. We're so glad you're here. See you next time.